Hello everybody, JGC Anime here, and today we are going to be reviewing The Devil is a Part-Timer. The best way to describe this anime is the devil working at McDonald's, I guess you could say. And yeah, so let's just hop right into this. So what is the story summary of this anime? It's basically kind of like a reverse isekai in a way, where after the devil is defeated, like I believe it's Satan, I believe he's like Satan, I believe. I mean, he changes his name to Sadao Mao later in the story, so it's a bit hard to go by if he's Satan or not. However, moving past that, basically after the devil is just completely defeated, he realizes that he's not going to win, so he decides to flee to the human world we all know on Earth, where he tries to live his life there and in order to make money so that way he can pay for the rent for him and his subordinate, Shiro Aisha. I'm just gonna be reading their names off the wiki. They end up, just being there. He works at McDonald's, and that kind of sets off the whole plot. And several other characters, including like the hero who nearly defeated him, and pops in there. We're just gonna call her Emmy because I'm gonna be going by all of their like Earth names rather than their hero name and villain name and stuff like that. But anyway, yeah. That is just where the story starts, where he's just working at a McDonald's and things from his world are slowly starting to creep into the human world, the Earth world. So yeah, so let's go over what I like and dislike. One thing I definitely say that I have to like is the comedy. The comedy in this show is genuinely really funny. I really enjoy this comedy in this show, and it constantly feels like the characters are moving in a way that honestly isn't too poorly paced, and makes me really consider that other than like a few strange turns that occur, I really enjoyed it. And the story itself is also fantastic. I enjoy the story. I hear the ending of the light novels is terrible, but I've only read the first volume, so I still have like volumes 2 and 3 on my shelf, but I have yet to read those because honestly I find them to be more boring than the anime. But the anime I found to be a very compelling story. It kept me constantly invested in both storylines that they kind of made for, and I genuinely think it was a very fun story. The characters for the most part were really good too. There were a few weird ones, like the James lookalike called like Mitsuki Saru. I hope I pronounced that right, but he's literally just a James lookalike from like James from Team Rocket. He literally just looks exactly like James, so it's just very funny. There's a few other characters I don't really care for, like Chiho, like Chiyo Sasaki, but overall, I enjoyed the majority of the characters, and definitely one of my favorite characters has got to be Emi Yusa, and Sadao Mao, of course, or Mao and Emi. I think they are probably the big highlight of this show. Their chemistry is very funny, enjoyable, and they really bounce off the other characters quite well. Like Aisha, while he is funny, wouldn't really be the same without Mao there to kind of like guide him on. And Emi, she's actually pretty good for the most part. She does have friends who she works with, but they're not really necessary. They definitely add a bit more personality, like the character Rika, but a majority of the characters she interacts with genuinely aren't that interesting to me, and I think I could kind of ignore them. There are a few other characters that I could list that I'm a bit like unsure about, like a character that came on later in the story called Suzuno Kamazuki, but we can talk about her in the spoiler section since she's a much later storyline. And moving past that, a few things I could say I kind of dislike is definitely how there's some shifts in personality. Like, there's one thing I have noticed with this series, it's that there's strange tone shifts, not like tone shifts, but like emotional shifts for some characters. Like, there's this one moment where Mao is just suddenly feeling one way, even though there was nothing really like building up to it, but all I could really assume was that it was just because at the time of when watching, I'd assumed he'd probably been in that world for a good few months, so I'd imagine his opinions and emotions change on that. We just didn't see it, which makes it a bit harder to enjoy because the whole point of story developing and changing is because you get to see it. But each their own. With some spoiler-free thoughts, I generally enjoyed a lot of this season. I know that season 2 was on its way, and honestly, I really don't like the art style for season 2. In fact, I think it looks ugly in comparison to season 1's art style. But we're not here to talk about season 2. But I think season 1 did a fantastic job of like building up the story. Were there moments I wish that things could have been different? Yes, but overall, I still had a very good time, and I'm not afraid to say I did enjoy this series. So yeah, that's all I can really say without spoiling too much. So here's a timestamp to when the spoiler section of this review will be over. If you have seen the series, I recommend sticking around for the spoiler section, but if you haven't, you can skip to the end and hear my final thoughts. But whatever, let's just hop right into the spoiler section. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so what I mean by when I say I'm a little mixed on Suzuno's character in this series is that, well, I never really got a read on her as a character. Yes, she was an enemy turned friend, but I didn't feel that when she turned. The only time I felt like she really had any like connection to Mao was when she actually interacted with him at the end of her storyline, where he confronts her about everything, which wasn't terrible, but honestly, it was a bit There was also the time with Mao where throughout the entirety of early Devil's a Part-Timer, he's constantly saying how he's going to return to his home of Ente Isla to just take over. He's going to return, he's going to take over everything, and maybe take over Earth as well. However, after a while, even though he then says he wants to take control of Earth too because he wants to like control it through the fast food industry, he suddenly makes a turn at the end of the first storyline saying, I just like this world, I like these humans. Which I'm sure it works to an extent, but I definitely feel like it was a bit sudden. Like, it felt like he was required to say that because they were trying to wrap up the storyline, and it didn't feel like he was legitimately feeling those emotions. It just felt like they were the mix of the story, which apparently follows on throughout the rest of the story as well. But I, again, don't know. I have not read in the light novels. I am mostly just an anime watcher, and I'll probably stay to being an anime watcher since I find the light novels to be fairly mediocre. But there are those weird character shifts. Overall, though, I don't think that he had that many issues, though. In fact, Mao was probably, next to Emmy, my favorite character in the story. Emmy only tops him a little bit because I love her over-exaggerations when it comes to everything going on. From, like, how she's constantly denying that she and Mao have any form of relationship, which obviously they kind of do, but not in the romantic sense. But it's so funny seeing her deny it all the time. And just her overall exaggerations compared to, like, Mao's very calm and chill, like, mood, it makes it very funny because you think that normally if we were focusing on the villain, they'd be a lot more over exaggerated and focused, but then you just have Emmy, who is the hero, and yet she's the one who's constantly freaking out and getting mad and stuff. And I feel a lot of like connection between Mao and Emmy as characters, and I wish that I got to see even more of the two of them together because they were just definitely my favorite part of the show. As it was kind of like the feelings I had when I watched A Certain Magical Index with Toma and Misaka. I wish that they got to interact more, but you win some, you lose some. But to be fair, Emmy and Mao are together a lot in this story, and it definitely feels like the author is trying to give them development, which I can appreciate. But then there's characters like Chiho, who is literally just kind of like meant to be built up as a romantic interest for Mao, where she's fine, I guess. She's a fine character, but in actuality, when you think about it, she doesn't do too much. In fact, out of everyone, she's probably mostly the damsel in distress. Which I get it. She's meant to be like an innocent teenager who doesn't really know anything about this magical stuff. But I don't know. It's just, there's something off about her, and I can't place what it is. It's just, I don't like her. I don't hate her, but I don't really like her. She's kind of like this innocent bystander character where you can kind of accept her existence, but you don't really necessarily want her to be there. I know it sounds like I'm rambling a lot about her, but overall, I just think she was probably the weakest part of the story. That was the only thing weaker being the James knockoff that appeared, who was probably the weirdest character and honestly my least favorite character in the entire story. There were some characters that I could mention, but I probably really won't bring much about them. There's like the hero's companions, you know, Emi's companions, but I don't want to talk about them because they're probably they're just there. I don't care about that there. I don't really care. But then there are other people, like the boss of Mao, Mayumi Kisaki. She's a pretty fun character when she's on screen, but she's not on screen much, as she is very much a background character who does not do much in the story. I mean, she does kind of have this sudden romance with the James lookalike. Yes, I'm gonna keep calling him that, even though it's not her actual romance, but he sees her and he's like, "It's like an angel," which was funny. But she's probably my favorite background character, but definitely overall, Emi stands as my favorite character in the story. Then there's also the character Lucifer, who makes a somewhat change after being taken in by Mao, because he was originally his subordinate before turning to make a deal with some holy people and all that. You know, the normal, like, demons should be evil and holy people should be holy. Why are we flipping the scripts around? Yeah, I've heard that in a lot of stories. So many stories. I can at least list 3 of them off the top of my head if I tried. But overall, this whole story was definitely fun, though, and I don't think I have any problems with it. And I can genuinely say I like this series, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Season 2 has in store. Although, considering what fans of the light novels have said, I'm a little concerned. But yeah, so we're at the conclusion of this video. What are my final thoughts? It was pretty good. I enjoyed it, and I think it is worth a watch. The comedy is pretty good. The characters, for the most part, are extremely likable, and I can't think of almost anything that I can genuinely say I hate. There are a few small things, but they are of little importance, and that's why I have to give The Devil is a Part-Timer an 8 out of 10. A really enjoyable show, and I'm looking forward to Season 2. Even if I don't agree with its art style, I am looking forward to it, and I'm curious to see where Mao and those around him go next. So, yeah. Thank you all for watching. If you're new to the JGC Anime channel, don't forget to subscribe. I always welcome new anime fans to the channel, and I will see you all around. Peace!